Try it again. There it is. Today, we are going to look at this particular thought. A resilient faith fortifies. So as we look at that and focus in on that word to fortify, let's just real quickly start with a little bit of a grammar semantics lesson. So the suffix, you're excited about that, Colin? Good. The suffix ify, I-F-Y, really means to make or create. So if you're going to simplify something, you make it simple for someone else to understand. If you're going to clarify something, you make it clear for someone else to understand. If you're going to classify something, you put things into groups or classifications. If you are going to vilify somebody, you make them out to be the villain. You get the idea. Today we're going to fortify. So what does that mean? To make forty? It's really to make fort-like. And you all can picture that. You all can picture a fort and the strength that a fort gives and the protection that a fort offers. That's really what we're looking at today. That a resilient faith protects. It protects against our enemies. It protects against the devil, the world, our own sinful flesh. So as we look at this thought that a resilient faith protects, we're going to look at Hebrews chapter 12. We're in selected verses of 12 through 17. It starts out with this simple word, therefore, and really therefore means so, which means there has to be something that comes before the therefore. So what's before the therefore? It's what Mr. Huebner talked to us about yesterday. If you need a quick reminder on that, he talked to us about discipline. And that discipline is really a good thing. And there was encouragement there from Mr. Huebner in the verses that previewed this, that we should, as Christians, embrace discipline, because discipline readies us for what's ahead. So after that section, after we hear that we'll want to embrace discipline, therefore, so, because of that, do this. Strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees, make level paths for your feet. This is a spiritual metaphor for fortifying ourselves spiritually against the devil, the world, and ourselves. When you were a kid, you may have been in one of those awesome snowball fights where it's legit. So you're actually like building forts. If you ever built a snow fort before, the bigger you can make those walls, the thicker you can make those walls, the taller you can make those walls, the more fortified your fort is. The more protected you and your team are. And that's really the image that we want here. We're building a fort around ourselves. We're protecting ourselves. And it's not just ourselves that we're trying to protect. It's also those around us. He goes on to say this. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God. When you're in that snowball fight and the enemy, the opposition, comes to attack your fort or comes to attack others on your team, you're going to do everything you can to protect them. You're going to do everything you can to keep that fort fortified. And that's really the spiritual picture we want today. You're not just working to fortify yourselves, but you're working to fortify those around you. That's the encouragement we get in these first early verses of what we're going to look at today. And next, what's going to come next is more of a warning. Here's the warning. See that no one is sexually immoral or is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. Afterward, when he wanted to inherit this blessing, he was rejected. Even though he sought the blessing with tears, he could not change what he had done. So we clearly get a little bit of a glimpse into the situation with Esau. Some of you may need the reminder. Some of you probably don't know who Esau was at all. So let's just do a quick Cliff Notes version of Esau. Esau was an Old Testament figure. The Bible describes him as kind of a large, burly, ruddy, which really just means red, hairy man. He liked to be outdoors. He liked to hunt. He probably looked something like that. He was the oldest son of Isaac and Rebekah. He had a younger twin, Jacob. His father, Isaac, loved Esau more than he loved Jacob, but his mother, Rebekah, loved Jacob more than she loved Esau. But because Esau was the oldest of their children and the oldest of the two twins, the older of the two twins, he had the right to the inheritance. But his mother, his own mother, and his own twin schemed against him to steal his inheritance. He came from the fields one day, and he was starving. And he runs into his twin Jacob. Jacob says, "Yeah, I'll give you some food if you give me that inheritance." And Esau said, "Okay." So he exchanged his inheritance for a simple bowl of soup. He never did get it back. He was not fortified. He did not prepare himself. He did not protect himself for the scheming and the evil that was being planned against him. If he had, he would not have exchanged his inheritance for a bowl of soup. He exchanged a this for a that. But when we don't fortify ourselves, we often exchange this for that, even when it's not a fair trade. Maybe it looks like this for you. Maybe sometimes you're tempted to exchange Christian morals, what we're taught in the Bible, how we're taught to live, how we're built to live by our parents, by our teachers. Sometimes we decide to exchange that to be popular, to get more likes on social media, to get more people to like us, to get more eyes on us. We exchange this for that. Or maybe sometimes it looks like this. We exchange delayed gratification for instant pleasure. Sexual immorality was mentioned specifically in those verses for Hebrews. Sometimes instead of waiting and trusting God's promises, we want what we want, and we want it now. And that can be applied to many areas of our lives. We exchange this for that when we fail to fortify ourselves. Or maybe it looks like this for you. Sometimes we'll exchange loyalty for destruction. Here's what I mean by that. Instead of being loyal to your family, to your parents, to your friends, or to your teachers, and especially to your God, sometimes we exchange that for destruction, and that destruction comes in hateful, evil, hurtful, gossipy words that destroy them behind their back. When we don't fortify ourselves, we oftentimes, like Esau, will exchange this for that. And the devil knows those weaknesses, and he knows those low spots. Pastor Sievert on Wednesday reminded us, he said this: the devil climbs the fence where it's the lowest. If we have those weak spots in our lives, the devil knows what those weak spots are, and the devil knows how to expose those weak spots. But if we build those weak spots up, if we fortify ourselves and we fortify those around us, we are much more prepared to handle the onslaught from the devil, from the world, and even from ourselves. But what does that look like? How do you get there? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what I think spiritual fortification looks like. Two of them are from my high school years. So the first one was when I was a freshman in high school. We had one of our science teachers and his wife, I think, were having their third child. And unfortunately, sadly, tragically, that child died in childbirth. It was devastating. We all felt it. We felt terrible for our teacher. It was a small school, so it was one of those things where everybody knew everybody, even smaller than this school. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew the teacher. Everybody knew his family. We loved his family. We loved his wife, and we felt terrible for them. It's a sad thing. A few days after that, he was back in the classroom, and he spent the first 15 to 20 minutes of class talking about it, just a few days later. And of course he was sad. Of course he was devastated. But he took that opportunity to witness to us as high school kids to show us that his faith had not faltered. His faith was strengthened. He knew that his God was still a kind and gracious and compassionate God, regardless of what happened to his newborn child. Understand that he would not have been able to respond in that way if he hadn't, for years and years and years and years before that, fortified himself on the foundation of God's grace. A few years later, I was a senior. We were getting a new teacher. He had moved his wife and his family and his kids from Texas up to Nebraska, except for one of his kids. One of his kids, their oldest child, 18-year-old daughter, did not come with them. She was so far along in her cancer battle that she couldn't make the trip. She had to stay in the hospital. A couple months later, she died. Again. We felt terrible for him. That's a devastating thing. Just like our science teacher, 3 years before that, he took the opportunity when he got back to witness to us as high school kids and to tell us his faith hadn't faltered. His faith had strengthened. He still knew that his God was a God of grace and compassion and forgiveness, regardless of what happened to his 18-year-old daughter. Understand that he could not have responded the way he did if he had not, for years and years and years before that, fortified himself on the foundation of God's grace. I think sometimes schools like St. Croix, schools like the high school I went to, other schools that we are familiar with, like Southwest Christian and St. Agnes and Concordia, and you can name a few more, I think sometimes we get an unfair reputation. And it usually goes something like this. Well, those kids at St. Croix, they're in such a bubble. Or those students at Southwest Christian, they're so protected. They don't really know what the real world is like. Since when? Since when is it a bad thing to be surrounded by Christians? Since when is it a bad thing to spend 15 minutes in chapel and hear God's grace every single day? Since when is it a bad thing to attend religion classes where we get to hear God's story? Since when is it a bad thing to have teachers who believe what the Bible teaches and can show you what it looks like to live a Christian life, to model that? That's how we fortify ourselves. That's how we fortify each other. And I see it in what you all do weekly. I see it with the student group who meets once a week to do their own Bible study. I see it in other student groups who work to serve others. Mentor-mentee comes to mind. Letters of love come to mind. New friends comes to mind. These are ways we can fortify ourselves and fortify each other. I see it in here when you guys aren't sleeping and you're actually paying attention to the message. I see it on your teams when you encourage each other and build each other up instead of tearing each other down. I see it in the hallways and in study hall when you freely have spiritual religious discussions. These are ways we can fortify ourselves and we can fortify each other. I'm going to leave you with this thought for the week. It comes from Isaiah chapter 41. In Isaiah 41, God is speaking to Israel. Israel was not in a good space. They were in Babylonian exile. Things weren't looking good, and God came to them with this encouragement. He gives the same encouragement to us. Do not fear, and here's why. I am with you. Do not be dismayed, and here's why. I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will fortify you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. As a father reaches down to pick up his helpless child and pulls him out of the street when a car is coming, or pulls him out of the water when he can't swim, our Father does that as well. The child was helpless. He couldn't do anything to save himself, and the Father picked him up and protected him. We can't fortify ourselves on our own. It has to be built on the foundation of Christ. And he reaches down and he picks us up, and he holds us tight and protects us. So fortify yourselves. But fortify yourselves in Christ. Do we have time to sing, Pastor Siebert? 2 stanzas. Let's sing. Prayer. Lord, forgive us for the times where we have failed to fortify ourselves against the devil, the world, and our own sinful flesh. Forgive us for the times where we have failed to fortify each other, and instead we break each other down. Please help us to learn to fortify ourselves, to learn to fortify each other only and all through you, so that we can stand firm against the onslaught. Amen.